Okay, everyone, welcome to Tomo's Countering Geras guide. How this is going to work is I'm going to first of all go through Geras's moveset for those that might be unfamiliar with his frame data, show you what's plus, what's punishable, go through his specials, go through some of his worst matchups so you know if you're in a favorable matchup. I'll only pick like 4 characters or so, just like the really horrendous matchups that I personally really struggle with. And then I'll finally, in the largest portion of this video, go through 8 of the most common clone setups, the time stop clone setups, and show people how to counter them in ways that aren't just guess right blocking or armor through it. Okay, starting off with his normals, I'm going to show you some of his most common buttons that you're going to see all the time in matches against Geras, show you the exact frame data of what's plus, safe, and punishable. So I've set the dummy to block everything. We'll just start with common ones like stand 1. Stand 1 is +3, as you'll see down there. So that has good shimmy potential with forward 4, stand 1 forward 4. That's something you'll see Geras commonly do. It basically becomes 11 frame low. Interruptible, armorable, but kind of a gimmick, especially online. His forward 4-4, his low starter, free low starter, -16. We've also got back 1-2, -7, but that's his mid launching string, the one that you'll see everyone go into off a punish. His forward 2-4, that string leads into Kameo pretty safely as well. By itself it's safe, it's -4. And Kameo will jail off of that. Most Kameos will jail off of that, unless it's like an incredibly slow one like Geras's Cyrax's net, I'd say. His last main string is forward 1-2 grab. -5 if blocked. However, every hit of this is flawless blockable and interruptible with armor. So this string, while a mix-up with command grab and stuff like that, can be easily armored through with every single gap. Last thing I'll go through is his forward 3, obviously. 19 frame overhead, but -25 on block. If you successfully block that, have fun with your 40% combo that you're going to get as a punish. It has some pushback, but look how long it takes me to block. It's a while. You can get up there with most characters and do something with that punish. His down 1 is 7 frames, -8, and it does jail into stand 1 on hit. His down 3 is 9 frames, also -8, jails into stand 1 and forward 1. His last good poke is down 4. The range on this is pretty impressive. About there. Oh, about there. -5, +14 on hit, and will jail. If it hits point blank, will jail into forward 2. His easy combo starter. So, that's his normals. Next thing I'm going to do is go through his specials, his common specials. Okay, I'm going to go through all of his specials now, except for the clone setup, the 2-bar clone setup. I'll make that the largest portion of this video later. But just to show you the frame data, I better set the dummy to block. It is already? Okay, so time stop, his time freeze, -17, full punish on block, 16 frame startup. It does hit mid, but you will rarely see a Geras throw this out on block. Like, none of them are going to throw that out there. His history lesson is his command grab, his down forward 2 or his down back 2, depending on which way you want the opponent to go. This is everyone's new favorite move, obviously, because you can enhance it and it becomes a mid, it does extra damage, and it pops up with Mavado and 1 or 2 other Kameos for a full combo. This will still tech off forward 1, forward 1-2, down 1, down 3, and I think down 4. Yeah, okay. So lots of tech potential there. Oh, sorry, there's actually one more. His 2-1 does not tech. I thought it did. Oh, it's when the opponent crouches after blocking the overhead. I see. I remember that now. Clue showed me that. So, that's the command grab in a nutshell. The redo. Geras will become invulnerable for 5 seconds. He will stay in that state, and he will, at the end of 5 seconds, whether he is in a combo or has not been hit, will revert back to that point where you input the redo, unless you do a move involving some sand, like a command grab. It will bring you out of the redo stance. If I set the opponent to not block, and I do redo, if I hit them with forward 1-2, it will take me out of the stance as well because there's some sand involved. 1-2-2 grab. Same thing. There's an hourglass, there's sand. It will take me out of the redo. It won't snap me back to the point where I inputted the move. Next thing is the countdown. The snap. The free combo starter anywhere on screen that hits mid. You can change which side of the opponent you want to appear on if the snap hits, just by holding back if you want to appear on the same side, or nothing if you want to appear on the other side. On block, this is death, especially at a close range. -22. If you don't have the charges, it is a 71 frame startup install, and you will need to do it 3 times to get the full charges like I have just done there. I already had one set up. So, that's the snap frames. Denial is down back 4. Better set this back to, yep, block. Down back 4. -18. I believe it's the same when enhanced. Oh, a little bit more plus, but still easily punishable. This is also his armor move. A great anti-air armor, really bad for grounded armor. Like it doesn't even hit there. It barely hit there. Last special move I'm going to go over in this section is the Sandstorm. At 3 different ranges. Far, close, and mid. This on block, -27. I believe that's universal no matter where you are on screen. Yeah, it is. So that is death on block. If you block that mid-screen from here, it's basically a free punish. It does have an EX version, which you guys will know is the timed version of the Sandstorm. That I'll talk through a little bit in one of the clone setups, because that can be used to perform a really severe OTG that you have to block. Okay, so that's basically his moves, his normals and specials. I'm going to go through 3 of his most common cameo pairings now, and I'll show you their strengths and their weaknesses. All right, guys, Geras Motaro. What I still believe to be Geras' strongest pairing and my most used team is the one I'm going to go through first. His strengths are free installs into full screen teleports. Very hard to punish as the opponent. Plus frames off his strings. All this is plus 13 if blocked. You also get an OSable forward 4. Launching string, I'll show you. So you saw that on block, it just becomes plus 13 on hit. Even if I still call Motaro, I'm getting a combo. So, you'll also see that the 3 cameos I talk about share that trait. The forward 4-4 OSable cameo call will be safe on block, if not plus, like Motaro's, or just allow for full combo regardless of whether it hits or not. So, how do you, as a player, counter this cameo's common plus frame strings? I'll show you 2. Right, so that was Geras's back 1-2 into Motaro. That one can be easily stand 1 interrupted by everyone, including Quan Chi. If you don't feel like trying to go for that punish, you can just normally armor it like that, because it can be tight, especially online, but it is definitely there. The other string that Geras players will very commonly throw Motaro on the back of is his forward 2-4. That you have to hold. I'm giving you this piece of advice. Please block that cameo call, because I'll try and armor and show you. You will just get hit. It jails. The input for armor was there. Input for armor was there, and it just does not come out. It fully jails, so please respect that. That's my piece of advice for that. Other than that, things like 1-2, forward 1-2, back 1 into cameo, forward 2 into cameo, all these are armorable. If you make a read on the cameo coming, you can armor these gaps. So, that's the best way to counter the Motaro Kameo with Geras. I don't really see anyone countering this stuff, because not even teleporting characters can react punish to that. It kind of has to be a read. So apart from that, as long as everyone now knows that that is fake, that is fake, that is fake, that is fake, that is super fake, that's also super fake. All those can be armored, if not regularly interrupted by stand 1. So that's the best way to counter Motaro with Geras. I'll show you Mavado up next. Alright everyone, this is the Geras Mavado team. This is the ultimate mix enforcement team for Geras. Everyone knows about forward 3. Converting for free into Mavado. So that adds an overhead element to his mix. Everyone also knows about EX command grab. Hits mid, ticks on hit for 1 bar 1 cameo into 33%. Very dangerous mix game now with this character. So I'm going to show you how he works on block strings and how you best approach this team in terms of your game plan. So I'll switch back to the recordings I have. Ignore that. So, common strings. This cameo works very, very much like Motaro. His forward 2-4 completely jails. You see I tried ducking there. I have to hold that. I can't armor it. Same thing as Motaro. Equally the same as Motaro is his back 1 string. Except this one you can duck for a free punish. Right? You can also interrupt it with armor if you so feel the desire, but you get a free duck off the back of that. So that's up to you. Next string is his 1-2. Duckable. This is not real. This does not jail. You'll see a lot of Geras's actually use that as well. So be aware that 1-2 is not real with Mavado. His last string, his forward 4-4 into Mavado, is real. I can't duck that. That's me trying to duck that. And me trying to armor it. Doesn't work, fully jails. So in those respects, very much the same as the Motaro Kameo. So, you as a player, how do you go against this team that can do stuff like this when they don't drop it? You need to get used to armoring forward 1. You need to be able to react to this button on block and armor it. So I'll show you guys just what that looks like really quickly right now. I've set the dummy to tick throw off forward 1 into a full combo like so. As the opponent to Geras, you need to be reacting to that forward one and armoring it. That is the best way to get through this team's forward 1-2 offense into tick throws, because the forward one is the most common tick throw for Geras players, especially myself, and it's the easiest way to take your turn back. The Geras can start mixing forward one on nothing in a long set because it's -6 and they can bait an armor, but in a short set like a first to 2 or a first to 3, armoring this gap is still your best option. So that's how to deal with a lot of the tick throw setups. Like it's forward 1, it's forward 1-2, it's pokes rarely because his pokes are like generally so bad, except he's down 3. Those will tick throw, so you need to be able to react armor if you think it's coming. Now, in terms of a spacing game, because his forward 3 is so dangerous from so many ranges, if I'm outside any range that is able to hit forward 4, like even if I'm back here, you should be blocking overhead at all times if it is not your turn. If it's your turn, continue with the game as normal. But if it's my turn, if I've somehow knocked you down and I'm at this range, there's no reason for you to be blocking low. I might throw a sweep out to try and condition players as a Geras player, but eating that, as opposed to eating this, there shouldn't be any question in your mind as to which one is a better option for you. So, in close, it's your best option to block low because it's a combo starter. Outside of that range, back here, you want to be blocking overhead. Those are the best tips I can give you to try and help you block Geras's mix. I know that it's like unreactable mix, especially up close. If I decide to do an overhead here, there's not a heck of a lot that can be done about it. But that's the best tips I can give you. Go off the spacing of the Geras player, you know, and make sure you're reacting to that forward 1 tick throw. So that's about it for the tips with Mavado. Just in terms of Geras specific stuff, other Mavado stuff is, you know, always be wary of full screen grab and low OTGs, stuff like that. But you guys already know that. We're just talking about Geras specific stuff. So I'll move on to the third team now, which is a new team that I love using, which is Geras Sareena. All right, welcome to my current favorite pairing with Geras, which is Sareena. This cameo is obviously infamous for being very strong in the neutral control, being able to get combos from basically anywhere on screen, especially with snap. If I have snap loaded, I can get that. She provides the same strengths as the other 2 cameos I already talked about, with the added bonus of a health boost. Now Geras is a 1000 health character with this team. So in terms of what she offers Geras off his strings, I'll show you some of those now with the dummy. His forward 2-4 into forward cameo is -2 on block and jails, like the other options I've shown you off that string. For his forward 4-4, it's the same thing. Jails off of it is -2 and can't be ducked or armored. The interesting parts of this team come with the 1-2 string and the back 1-2 string. So I'll show you 1-2 first. To keep that true, the Geras player has to use the mid Sareena kick, but that can be armored like any Sareena kick call on the back of any string can. The same thing goes for back 1-2. If Geras wants to use Sareena to keep back 1-2 more safe, he's gonna have to use the kick, the mid, but it can be armored. So that's how you get around the Sareena Kameo call with Geras as the opponent. Those are the armorable gaps. I would advise, if you find that the Geras player is doing Sareena back 1 to enter the normal forward knife throw too much on block and they're not going for the kick, you can start ducking that and getting a punish. So if they're not aware of their own team's strengths and weaknesses, you can fully capitalize on that. Now, she also gives him a lot of meter. You'll see me using this a lot lately, where I just give myself a damage boost and basically infinite meter for clone setups. It is important, if you see a Geras doing this in the neutral, you need to hit Sareena as soon as possible with any sort of move that will reach her from there. You'll see she gets called in front of Geras. I can move here to sort of block her and still get the advantage of the portal, but she's vulnerable to hits there. So it's your turn to go up and attack. You know, basically, if I'm turtling here, see, she just gets hit straight away. So, in terms of other weaknesses to talk about for this team, there is no overhead combo that you need to worry about. So the threat of the overhead mix becomes less dangerous than it is with Mavado. But, you know, it's still there. It's only a 9% move. Just be wary of it. It's not nearly as powerful as Mavado. You also can't get any sort of command grab combo off of this. You just have to worry about them normally. So in terms of combating this team, I think I would boil it down to know if they're keeping their strings truly safe with the correct Sareena option, and just be wary of normal Sareena neutral control. One thing I might add is this catches a lot of people, is if I'm anywhere outside jump range, even here, and I do forward Sareena, I have enough advantage to call a mid sandstorm and have it jail, especially at full screen. That will jail an opponent, so you need to be wary. If you're blocking full screen Sareena size, I'm going to call some mid projectiles on you. So you can armor it, but I'd be ducking those for the most part as the opponent of Geras Sareena. Now, I've gone over teams that I think are strong for Geras, teams that I like to use. I'm going to briefly touch on some bad matchups for Geras before I move on to the clone setups that everyone wants to see. So I'll see you in the next section for the bad matchups. Alright guys, in terms of bad matchups, there are two really severely bad ones that I want to point out and talk about just for a minute or two. And then there's one or two others that are not so badly outside of Geras's favour, but they are still nonetheless in the opposition's favour. So the very first one, the worst matchup by far in the game for Geras, is Scorpion. Holy hell, man. Back three into anything, even like any Kameo call on block, because they jail off back three and they keep Geras at such a far range, it is so hard to get in against this character. Not even talking about the fact that his 2-1 string outspaces basically every normal Geras has. And you're probably thinking, oh, Tomo, snap, must be a godsend, right? Yeah, only when I have it, you know? If you don't have snap, this is easily like a 6.5 to 3.5 matchup, like if not 7 to 3. I don't like saying 7 to 3 because I sound like Pax, but it feels so bad. You can't get full screen installs against this character because reaction spear, reaction teleport are so easy. You struggle actually time stopping his combos as well, because his combos are sort of designed in such a way where he has a lot of area to block the 1-bar breaker, because the mechanic works where the 1-bar breaker only comes out if you're hitting the opponent during a move, right? So there's that to deal with. There's just, you know, so much. The current popular, you know, Scorpion Jax Kev team, you know, into Spiros on block. You can't armor that as Geras. His armor's too slow. You just get armor broke by Spiros, and then you have to eat the pressure after that. It just feels like such a bad matchup. It's really hard. The last thing is his armor move, his charging spear. Because it side switches and advances so far, it genuinely gets Scorpion out of a lot of clone setups for free. So, having said all that, I hope you understand why I completely hate the character in the matchup. The next bad matchup I want to talk about is Ashra. Ashra, for the same reasons as Scorpion, is bad in terms of outspacing Geras with her normals. The forward 2 is ridiculous. The stand 2 is ridiculous. The back 3 is ridiculous. These are all very good buttons. But her armor move is what sets her apart. The 5 hitting armor will negate basically every clone setup except one's designed to break that much armor. I have one clone setup that will break her armor, but it is specific to her, you know? I have to change my game plan based on my opponent. That's where she has strength over Geras. Yes, she can't punish a full screen install, but she rarely has to sit full screen against Geras because she can just, you know, Dark Stance phase in very easily. So, that's the Ashra strengths. 2 more I want to talk about are Lao and Lu. Both of them have their 6-frame stand 1s. Geras's main mid-string is -7 on block. So these guys get to punish that for free every single time. His back 1 too, -7 on block. Free punish for these 2 characters that lead into, you know, upwards of 35% for both of them. Other than that, it's not super hard to get around their game plan. Lu is more of a zoner. Lao flies around everywhere, but Snap deals with both of those playstyles decently well enough where it doesn't feel horrendous. Apart from those 4, I reckon the only other like matchup where I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to actually work for this is probably Takeda, again for the spacing normals. A bit of Ermac, his stand 2 is pretty strong. Sindel and Rain, characters with long normals. They make me work for my win in a way that other characters won't. But in saying that, the 4 that I mentioned, especially Scorpion and Ashra, have such good armor moves and other tools to deal with Geras's kit, to the point where I feel like they are at least 6-4, maybe 7-3 in Scorpion's case. So, I've talked about matchups, I've talked about good teams for Geras, I've talked about his moveset. Now, I'm finally going to get into the clone setups. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show in video the 8 setups I'm going to be talking about, and then I'm going to go back into the lab and I'm going to show you guys different ways that any character can counter these setups, each individual setup. So, I'll see you in that segment. So that was Geras's first clone setup, also his simplest, and it's simply just an armor read setup where the Geras player thinks that you're going to wake up with an armored move after the forward 1-2, and they're going to let the clone hit you while they block and continue the combo afterwards freely. So the best way to counter this one, other than just blocking it because it's the easiest one, is actually a forward jump, because what's going to happen is the clone, if timed correctly, will hit the first stand 1 on you, and then the rest of the string will whiff. you, as the player, will fall down right in front of Geras, and then you can wake up armor or wake up block normally, completely nullifying the clone setup because it won't track you back. I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm going to jump forward here. Like so, right? That's the best option for that clone setup. It should be said at this point as well that all of these setups are basically reads on what the Geras is doing with the clone. In a long set, it'd be a lot easier to tell. But as a starting base point for you guys, when the Geras player, your opponent, ends their aerial combo with forward 2, sandburst into the forward 1-2, like in this situation here, that's generally a good indicator that they're going to go for some sort of mix option or an anti-armor setup. So mix or anti-armor. So it's going to be one of those two things. That's the best I can give you in terms of tips for that one. But this one's not too hard to get out of. It's the forward jump, which completely screws the clone's gravity. And then as you get up, you can armor because the Geras player will likely not actually realize what's happened and won't be able to confirm off the jump stand one. And then it's gameplay as usual. So that's that setup. Let's move on to the second setup now. Alright guys, I'm sure everyone's familiar with that setup. That is the classic command grab hit setup where Geras himself inputs a normal command grab and the clone continues the combo by stunning them in place and then using 2-1 to let Geras stand up and get a full combo. This is a hellish one because this is the one that hits people on block. You would think that this has no easy counter, but it really kind of does. It's the same as the first setup's counter, except it's jump back, not jump forward. I'll show you what it looks like when you jump back on this setup. I'll have the dummy go against me, and you get to see what it looks like when I jump back. So jumping back here, whiff. Obviously, a smart Geras player wouldn't continue the sequence, but you get the idea. You're literally just jumping out of the entire thing. Now, that works for that setup's timing that you just saw, where the aerial part of the first combo for Geras ends in stand 4, forward 1-2 into the clone setup. The Geras player can change the timing of the command grab and the clone inputs to try and catch you jumping, but it will only catch you jumping. It will not combo. It'll be the same situation as the first setup where you fall out of it and then you are able to get up with armor or just continue a normal gameplay where you've been hit down by your opponent. So that is the best option to get out of command grab. The armor option is not there because the command grab and the stand 1 will hit basically at the same time, and then the 2-1 of the clone will actually combo you. So this is not one that you should try and armor out of unless you have one of the specifically good armors like Ashura, Scorpion, even Reiko and Shao have good armors for this setup because they move with their armor. So yeah, it's the best option for most characters here is to jump back. Okay, so sorry, I'm waffling on a bit. I'm just trying to think if there's another way to counter it, but this really is the best way I can think of. All right, guys, that is what I like to call his side switch cross up overhead low mix setup. It is for when the Geras player wants to switch sides. Maybe he's close to a corner and he wants to put your back to it, for example. That's when you might more commonly see this setup. This one is actually one of the easier ones to get out of, assuming you are anywhere except the corner. All you have to do to make the clone completely whiff its entire moveset is to dash back on wake up and block Geras jumping in. That's it. What's going to happen is no matter how well the Geras player times the clone, this specific setup, you can always backdash the initial stand one of the clone, and then the forward 4-4 just does not hit you because you're not in that area. I'll show you what it looks like. So I don't even have to input it as a wake up option. I can do it right now. Dash back. Just like that. It really is that simple. The timing is not strict on the dash back block. And you might be thinking, oh, Tomo, is there enough time for you to anti-air or up-block Geras coming in? Yes, there is. However, if you up-block and try and punish, the forward 4 will catch you as your character moves forward. I've tried it. If you anti-air, the forward 4 will catch you at the end as a trade. So if you want to trade, you can. But if you want to try and get the punish off of what the Geras player is inputting, because with this setup, they'll always be inputting deep jumps into 2-1, then you should be able to take your turn back fairly easily, if not get a clean punish, depending on how fast your character is. So, in summary, dash back and block the jump in. That is the best way to counter the side switching setup. I'm going to go ahead and move on into the fourth clone setup now. So I'm sure everyone's seen that setup. That is the ultimate overhead low mix-up clone setup. And I bet some people are thinking, this can't be countered. What the hell do I even do against this? Yes, this is probably his strongest standard clone setup, but there are some things that we've already talked about that can counter it. So the first and easiest, most brain-dead option for you as the opponent is to, once again, jump backwards. The Geras player can time the clone and his own stand 2-1, his own forward 4-4, as well as he wants. A jump back will still completely wreck the gravity of the combo. Now, in this specific setup, the second forward 4-4 that the clone does will meter you as you're on the ground, so you have to be wary of that. But you are out of the setup and you won't be mixed for 40%. I will show you what that looks like now before I go into the other option for this setup. So this is my jump back option. I'm going to jump back. The gravity is messed up, but I still have to block because that second clone forward 4 was meeting me in that position. That's why this setup is so strong. Even if you jump out of it, it is still the Geras player's turn. Now, if you want to block this, it is actually not that hard. There is only one overhead in this entire setup, and the timing to block it is not unlenient. It comes from the clone's stand 2-1 string, and that's all you have to watch for. Because this is the most common Geras clone setup mid-screen off that ender, if you learn how to block this consistently, you're going to throw these Geras players off. So, all you need to do, before I show you how to do it, is watch clone's overhead for when it comes. It's the second hit of the clone. it'll be overhead. That's the only point you have to stand up. Other than that, you can block low and you should be sweet. I'm going to attempt to do it now to show you. Blocking low the entire time, right? Except for when that clone does his second hit. Right there. See that? Yes, the forward 4 is still there at the end of it to meter you, to keep the block pressure going, but you have not been mixed for 40%. Also, after that forward 4, you can, if your armor is faster than Geras's, armor through that gap. So, you can really throw the Geras player off that way. If you want to learn that block pattern, that's all you have to look out for, once again, is the clones overhead. It's the only overhead in that pattern. So, in summary, for the ultimate overhead low mix, jump back will mess up the gravity, but you'll be meated by the forward 4-4. Or learn the block pattern because there's only one overhead, and this is the most common setup for a Geras player. So, I hope that has helped you guys. I'm going to move on to the last standard clone setup before I get into forced OTG setups. So this is the setup that you're going to see a Geras player employ in a longer set if you keep back jumping all his other clone setups. This is the anti-jump back setup designed specifically to counter the counter for his clone setups, funnily enough. So other than, like, if you're in a long set and you're now making the read that the Geras player is going to do this setup, this is not a strong mix setup on block. This is easily blocked and easily countered after the clone pressure has ended. If you get to this point in a set, you have gotten to the Geras player's head, which is always a good sign. So, you cannot jump this setup. It is designed specifically to counter jumping up, backwards, or forwards. The Geras will always have jump priority because he has the ability to move first. So his jump 2 will always come out immediately. You can't jump attack counter this. What you're going to want to do is, again, this is on a read, you're going to want to block the clone back 1-2, right? And as soon as that's finished, the Geras player is going to see that you've blocked that, try and continue block pressure, and you're going to armor that gap. You're going to armor through the clone's safety forward 3 in brackets and trade with Geras, right? So I'll show you what I mean by all of that. It's a lot to take in, but what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to block the back 1-2 and then armor, because the Geras is going to pretty much 100% of the time panic, try and continue block pressure. I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm going to block the clone and then armor once the Geras tries to continue pressure. Block the clone, armor. I trade with the safety forward 3. The Geras player would usually do a forward 3 there, right? Just for the safety and to keep block pressure, but he himself will also have to continue it. So an armor there is a very good option. If you have a forward advancing armor, like a lot of characters do, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Shao, Reiko, all these characters, it might not even trade. That's something that you as a player will have to discover yourself. But you see, even Geras with a bad horizontal armor still gets out of that setup with good timing. So, in short, block the back 1-2. That is designed to catch you jumping, and then armor once the Geras player panics. Now, if you have a very long set and they start blocking that armor, then you get into the mind games of, okay, I'm not going to armor now, I'm just going to block the forward 3 and then armor. You know, these mind games, I can't teach you when to do what option, but this is your best option for when you start seeing this setup being thrown at you. So, those are 5 of the most common Geras clone setups. I'm going to go into 3 more setups that are a lot harder to deal with because they force you to block on wake up. They knock you down and they force you to block. So there's not a lot of jumping here. So I'll show you what I mean with this first setup. Alright, now initially you might be thinking to yourself, Tomo, I thought we were talking about clone setups. There was no clone in sight there. While that is true, I felt the need to include this setup because it doesn't require clone. This is a 2-bar setup only that still forces OTG that honestly has 0 option except block. That's why I wanted to include this setup. I cannot stress this enough. There is literally no option in the entire game except blocking this EX sand pillar. I promise you, unless you can think of some obscure Kameo related exit strategy, you cannot delay wake up, you cannot jump, you cannot press buttons, you cannot wake up dash, you can't wake up armor, you can't do anything except block this pillar. If you do not block this pillar, you will be eating a huge combo. I will show you a couple of those options if you do not believe me right now. But I promise you, you must block this setup. I'm going to delay wake up here. So delay wake up? No. Right? I'm going to try armor this time. Ready? Armor input? No. Have to block it. Right? I can't stress enough that this is a very seriously real forced Oki setup. If you see the Geras set this up, please get ready on that block button. I'm going to move on now to something that has a little more counterplay than just hold block, brother. So I'll show you that now. So, welcome to the ninth circle of hell, basically. These forced OTG setups negate your ability to jump and your ability to armor. So, you have to learn some block patterns. Luckily for everyone, mid-screen block patterns using this forced OTG setup are nearly universally the same, right? You take the hits from the first part of the combo, and once it splats you down, it is 99.9% low then overhead, right? If the Geras wants to continue a combo using a snap, the way that I just did mid-screen, it will be low then overhead, right? They can overhead, but the gravity of 2 forward threes is not going to be viable in mid-screen. Like, even a snap won't catch that. So they'll get 15% in overheads, yes, but you have avoided a full combo. So, to show you how easy it is to learn this block pattern, I've set the dummy to do the full sequence. Once you block the overhead, even though the Geras didn't do it, the clone did it, it is still back to neutral because the Geras did back 4. Back 4, even on block, still not a super plus move. So, because you're at a good space, you can walk back or start advancing depending on your character and their moves. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to get hit by the first part of the sequence, then I'm going to block low overhead, remember? And it's easy. Look. Low overhead. Right there. Now the dummy's going to keep going because he's set to that. But I'll try it again. I'll do the block, and then I'll start some counter movements, some counter moves. Low then overhead, remember? Sweet. See? The block pattern is not hard. You, again, this is forced, so you can't armor or jump. I need to stress that. If you try doing that, you're going to get hit. But the block pattern will usually be 99% of the time low then overhead if the Geras wants to do a combo. Now, that is actually universal for the forced OTG setups with clone, even the ones in the corner. I will show you the most common corner one now, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright guys, this is the last setup I'm going to go through for the video. And as you can see, it's a pretty deadly one, especially because it's in the corner. The Geras can get a lot of damage off this if you're hit by it. However, this one, because of how close the Geras is to you in the corner, genuinely has some easy counterplay after the first set of moves by Geras and the clone. So, I'm going to show you a couple examples of what to do. Let's say you get hit by the first section of the entire sequence. I'll show you what to do after that for the second bit. And I'll show you what to do to counter the second bit if you block the first bit correctly. So, as you saw, it starts with Geras doing a forward 3 and the clone doing the 1-2-2 to splat you on the ground and force the OTG. So let's say I get hit by that first overhead. I need to then block low, then overhead on the Geras Oki, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm going to get hit here because I'm blocking low, then I block low overhead, and you'll notice, hang on, I'll reset him. You'll notice in the corner, if the Geras wants to launch here for a nice full damaging combo, he has to do forward 4 into Sandburst. If he does that, because this is the most common version of this setup in the corner, that is a full punish if blocked correctly. I will show you the full punish for that sequence. So I'm going to get hit for the first half of this, and then block the second bit, the low overhead correctly, and get a full punish. I'll show you. Going to get hit with the overhead, then block low overhead, full punish, right? Now, let's say, for example, that you block both the first overhead and the second bit. Well, if you block the first one, you're going to do this, right? I'll show you what happens. So what's going to happen is the overhead for Geras is going to be blocked. The 1-2-2 for the clone is going to keep you in block pressure, but because Geras recovers so slowly from his forward 3, you have enough time to completely jump out of the corner and get a full punish on the Geras for him trying to continue his pressure. I'll show you right now. So I block the overhead this time, and I'm out. Right? How good is that? It's a free jump out of the corner into full combo of your choosing. Yes, there are variations to this, but there are so many that I can't go over. This is 100% the most common version. And you'll notice that you can't armor after the forward 4-4 into clone. It's safe on block. It is the same for back 1. I'll show you what it looks like when you try and armor off the blocked forward 4 at the start, right? Because you see this and you're like, oh, I'm going to armor that clone. No, armor break, right? So it's an armor breaking setup on block. You need to be careful about that. They'll only go into it, smart Geras players will only go into it off forward 4-4 or back 1. Back 1 does the same thing. It has enough blocks done to guarantee a clone on block. So that's how to deal with that setup though. If you block that initial overhead, you get a free jump out punish. I'll show you one more time. Block that first overhead. So look how long Geras takes to recover, right? It's completely free. So now you know how to deal with his most deadly corner clone setup. I am going to finish up here and just do a quick outro. So guys, that wraps it up for me. Good luck fighting against Geras in the future. Hopefully all this extra information and deep explanation of some basic clone setups has given you a bit more confidence to fight against it. And yeah, that'll be it from me. Good luck. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.